chaos is good for shipping. Yeah, chaos makes people nervous about getting their goods, so they'll pay more for cargoes. Is shipping ready to be decarbonised? How can it be decarbonised? The challenge for journalism is to create services of value, not clickbait. You use those web techniques just to get people to read a story. Be humble, be honest, be true to yourself, those sorts of things. I think in this complex world, if you're not true to yourself, if you don't have personal values that you live, it can be psychologically very, very difficult.
I'm Farah Shammas. Welcome to Hotel Talk. We hope you enjoy listening to this friendly conversation between people connected by real life in hotels.
Today, I'm so happy to have with us Julian Bray, who is the editor-in-chief of Tradewinds, which is a shipping business publication. It is 30 years old, I've just learned, because obviously I'm not in the shipping industry, even though we have our own marina here in Cyprus. So I do know a little bit about yachting and marinas, but not so much shipping. However, this is really proof that we are all connected by hotels, because Julian and I met because he is a guest of our hotel here in Limassol, Cyprus, because at the moment there is Maritime Cyprus going on. So Julian, welcome to St. Raphael, welcome to Hotel Talk, and thank you so much for sparing some time to be with us on this podcast.
Farah, an absolute pleasure to be today, and great to meet you and take part in this podcast.
Oh, I'm so happy. So why don't you start by telling people who aren't in shipping why shipping is so important?
Well, I think actually in the last couple of years, a lot of people have realised how important it is. You know, after the lockdown, when everyone was sitting at home thinking they needed some new garden furniture and needed to get it from Asia, and suddenly the ships were full, and then the huge container ship got stuck in the Suez Canal. There were real problems, and the cost of shipping went up. The delivery times went out, and I'm sure everyone has a story of not being able to buy something they took for a group.
Toilet paper, it was crazy.
Absolutely. And it was all business stuck on ships. And the shipping industry is, it's one of those, it's sort of like an essential service that nobody really thinks about. It's there, it works, it brings stuff to our doors, fuel, manufactured goods, cars, whatever it may be, grain, oil. And it just gets on with the job. Of course, we notice it when it goes wrong, as these things do. And as a shipping, as an industry, it's at the centre of a lot of the crises and opportunities that the global economy is facing today.
Absolutely. I think so many people didn't really think about where anything came from or how it got to us. And it was like, oh, I'll just order that from here or there. And then lockdown really made people realize, oh, Amazon, well, 1 minute, how's that getting to me? And why is there a delay? And absolutely. So I've been to many conferences in Cyprus where people have said about shipping and how important it is. Tell us a little bit about your publication, and because that's obviously geared towards the people in the industry, which from what I understand is a very, very tight-knit industry.
Tradewinds certainly isn't something I'd expect many of your viewers or visitors to be particularly interested in.
Well, we get a lot of people in the shipping industry stay with us, so yeah.
Yeah, maybe it is. It's one of those specialist publications. It's almost a business service in its way. Mm-hmm. But with shipping, because it's such a private industry, and obviously here in Cyprus, which is a major shipping centre.
It's a huge for us. So I'm pretty sure a lot of listeners, if they're based in Cyprus as well, they'll know you, they'll know your publication, and they'll want to know more about it.
What's great about being a journalist in shipping, although that sounds like a slightly strange thing, is being such a private business, yet being a business which is so personally networked and with such huge amounts of money on the table and deals and the issues the industry is facing. It's a very vibrant thing.
Well, there's so much is at stake, isn't it?
Yeah,
there's ups and downs all the time. People can make I don't want to say millions, multi-millions, and then lose.
They can make billions.
Billions, and then lose it.
In we were just talking about the problems with container shipping. Because of those problems, the price for shipping containers went through the roof. The price for hiring, for chartering, as they say, the container ships went through the roof. There were several people who literally made billions and billions of dollars out of those gyrations. So there is a lot of money on the table, and there are still the shipping magnates, the characters, Some are good, some are bad, and some are a bit ugly, but all of them are
like
fascinating and very, very creative and really interesting to be reporting.
And you've been working in this current position for how long?
I've been the editor-in-chief of Tradewinds since 2008.
Wow.
Before that, I was the editor of Lloyd's List, which some people may remember used to be a daily newspaper, sort of the Bible of global shipping. It's no longer really what it was. And before that, I worked for Reuters as a news journalist and this sort of thing. So I'm pickled in news.
But how did you get into shipping then, or shipping journalism?
Entirely by accident. It was I found I was quite good at journalism when I was to college. I studied geology actually rather than journalism. But found that the writing and construction of news stories, I was just accidentally good at it. And one thing led to another. I worked on a few small business publications, and I had an opportunity on a small shipping business publication to take a bit of a leadership position, and found it worked. And then career ladders, mine's been entirely haphazard, but thankfully really good. So.
Needless to say, you're obviously excellent at your job. Otherwise, you wouldn't have got where you've got. So.
Fingers crossed.
Oh, no, I'm sure. So now I want to get into the nitty-gritty a little bit about journalism. So I'm sure, as a business publication as well, I mean, you're not a tabloid, you're writing very factual, informative pieces. Do you put opinions on that as well?
You do, but we are careful to make sure there's a clear differentiation. And obviously there are shades of grey in opinion. For instance, a straight news story, a politician says X because they want to raise tax for Y, etc. Then, of course, it's how you interpret that.
Yeah, is that good? Is that bad?
Well, there's good and bad. There's also, is it credible, or are there risks involved? In the UK, the risk of markets recently is an interesting one. But then, is it good? Is it bad? We are on the relatively conservative side in our news reporting because we were trying to inform people of the landscape the business is operating in. However, though, we do have opinion pieces where I sometimes write and some of my colleagues write, where we say, actually, this is really lousy. This is a bad idea and it shouldn't be happening, or this is great and we should have more of it. Because I think to be slightly contrarian, slightly provocative, slightly helpful, enthusiastic, that adds to the debate.
Adds colour.
Yes, and it stimulates thought
and it's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you ever gone out with a piece you've regretted or that backfired?
You mean have we ever been sued? Yes. And we have relatively few serious legal problems because we pride ourselves as being
very careful.
Well, not only careful but professional.
Okay.
So we obviously report on court cases and arguments and legal rows, but sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes you get led astray by people. One or two of the worst cases we've had, the most difficult cases, of when we have found ourselves arguing other people's corners. We thought we were reporting factually, but actually we were reporting quite partial facts. And in those cases, you have to fall back, admit you're wrong, and suffer the consequences and pay the legal bills. But that's, I think it's sort of largely the world of libel in business press today is fairly straightforward. If you make a bad error, you're liable to be tripped up. But if you act to put it right quickly, if it's an honest error, then there isn't too much payback. Hopefully, we don't make too many errors to be in that position. But when you do, you need to face up to quickly.
I love that. Honesty is key, and I definitely can sense that.
Yeah, honesty and trust. Because we are, as some of these niche publications are, they're subscription publications. People buy them for intelligence and knowledge about the business, a bit of entertainment around the edge. Some of the mavericks and magnets.
Exactly. You want a bit of gossip as well.
Absolutely. But at the heart of it, it's about knowledge and trust and understanding and usefulness to help people in their own businesses. So that has to be rooted in factual accuracy and truth, and then honest, fairly held opinions where there are those opinions. So it's hugely stimulating, I must say.
So where do you see the future? I mean, the pandemic has brought with it, what a crisis for every single industry out there.
Indeed.
And shipping is no exception. So where do you see the future? Because I know that a lot of people are quite, I won't say nervous, but concerned about the future right now.
Actually, the mood in the shipping industry in general is broadly fairly positive right now, I should say. And just a tiny bit of history here. Going back in the first decade of the 2000s, up till the financial crash, there was a huge boom in shipping, and people made a lot of money, and there were a lot of ships, and a lot of things being shipped around the world. Then, for pretty much the following 10 years, a lot of the debt that had been built up was very slowly squeezed out of the system. A lot of the companies had overcommitted, and they were stretched. They couldn't make new investments. Not so many companies went bust, but it was a difficult time. The 2010s were a difficult period in shipping. It was very slow. In the last few years, just before COVID, in fact, a lot of the markets gathered pace and started moving in the right direction, which is one of the reasons you had the container problems, because there was this squeeze. So there's that optimism. Now, there have been the following crises. There was COVID, there was the disruption, there's now the war and the sanctions, more chaos. But of course, chaos is good for shipping. Chaos makes people nervous about getting their goods, so they'll pay more for cargoes. So ship owners
it's all about
like
retail as well. It's crazy. Yeah.
And now you've got this situation where the big risk factor is decarbonisation. And that's what here at Maritime Cyprus, why I've been staying in the hotel, having quite high-level discussions about where the decarbonisation process goes. Is shipping ready to be decarbonised? How can it be decarbonised? There are lots of questions, lots of unanswered questions.
And how can it become sustainable?
Yeah, that's the question. When you have basically the industry still burns oil, to cut a long story short. And oil clearly isn't very clean. But there aren't today viable alternatives to put on a ship right now at this moment to be carbon free. So the question is how long it takes to get there, how much renewable energy to make this stuff, if it's ammonia, how to get it onto the ships, what price it will be, where can they pick it up to refuel. It's a very complex network. There's some optimism that we'll approach in the next few years or a tipping point, it'll go over. But there's also some conservatism that, this is too complex to solve. A lot of other things need to fall in place. So there's a lot going on, a fascinating time. But overall, for shipping, it's quite an interesting and sort of, there's some measure of optimism that both the markets and these questions will sort of put it into a more interesting place.
What would be your tips for the younger you, someone like you, starting out, someone listening to this who's maybe 20 years old and says, I want to go into journalism, or I love shipping, I think I could do this?
Journalism today can be a really good career, but you have to be creative. I think you have to be versatile. You have to do things like this. You have to do video and podcasts as well as print. You have to be willing to change. And
adapt, I guess.
And you have to be creative. Which are all very interesting and stimulating things. You can actually also have a career. A few years ago, say 10 years ago maybe, there was all the pest that journalism as a career because people were being sacked. Newspapers weren't seen as having a future. Video and podcasts hadn't really worked.
But I think the future is what you're doing. It's subscriptions. It's what people don't want to go on a Sunday or a Tuesday and buy a printed newspaper if they have time, if they find it, if they can carry it around. They have their smartphones. They want to be able to access good information, and they're willing to pay for it. Yep. And in many cases, it's like paying for a cup of coffee, and that's what they want, and they're willing to spend.
And you'll pay for the things you value. You'll pay for Netflix. You might pay for Disney Plus. You'll pay for an iPhone and the things that come with that. You'll pay for services that you value. The challenge for journalism is to create services of value, not clickbait. I mean, clickbait's funny. There's funny things you get at the bottom of the free web page.
Exactly,
everyone's clicked on them and thought, what is that? Someone got paid 0.00001 of a p for you doing that. It's irrelevant. The stuff that you really want is the stuff up front, the stuff people will want to pay for, to read, to view, to listen to.
Absolutely. I remember talking to someone in marketing actually and having that as a really good piece of advice, because there's always a way with the backlinks and putting, a certain number of words in your opening paragraph and having a repetition throughout your article, in order to get more potential traffic to your website or to your blog or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if it's not interesting, no one's going to no one's going to read it. So the value is in actually making it interesting, and then it's going to sell itself.
That's a very wise comment. That's exactly it. If you use those web techniques just to get people to read a story, but then they find the story useless or wrong or inaccurate or untruthful, then really, you've actually done yourself damage.
And some of the big, I mean, okay, maybe I'm not reading the shipping newspapers, but the international ones, even, dare I say it, Financial Times or other big publications, sometimes some of their articles can border on gossip columns or just it's shocking. Like, and you read them and you say, what was that about? Like, I read this because I went to the end of the article because I trusted it was going to give me value. And when it doesn't serve you, then you're left with that really horrible aftertaste of,
I think journalism does suffer from a problem of its own making, actually, over the years. That, the phrase "the fourth estate," that it was, holding people to account, which is what it does in sort of democratic terms, but it makes it sound as sort of something like an institution that's noble and sort of above itself. That's a dangerous place to be. Really, it's about human
connection
and human discourse and factual reporting and analysis. And yes, holding people down is a very important thing. But journalism can make mistakes. And it needs to face up to the mistakes. In the UK, the journalism of the last 20 years, there have been some...
My goodness.
There have been a lot of bad mistakes. And journalism and journalists haven't been good enough at facing up to those mistakes and acknowledging they need to do better, because they are human, and they were driven by other professional, a lot of commercial reasons. And
I was going to say loving what they do as opposed to just loving the money as well.
There needs to be some humility, like frankly everything in life. You need to be careful, professional, humble.
I love that. I think that's brilliant. So let's get on to a little bit about hotel talk now. So how have you found Cyprus? I don't know, is this your first time here? You've been here several times with Maritime?
Quite a few times, probably 5 or 6 times over the years. I've never been here for very long, often for conferences or meeting people to...
You've never actually holidayed here?
No, sadly not.
Yeah.
No, one of the terrible things about my job is I've travelled around the world a great deal and gone to some really interesting places, met lots of very interesting people, but I've actually spent relatively little time in those places.
In the actual country, yeah. You see a hotel, a conference room, the airport, maybe a restaurant, and then that's it. I had that when I travelled a lot.
What's disappointing, of course, you haven't seen the sights and you haven't sort of been to the lovely restaurants and things. The interesting part of it, though, is you've seen the real life and you've met real people. I mean, I could suggest this today, talking to you. This is about real life rather than about sort of the holiday package thing, which is all very sort of artificial, can be artificial.
Can be, yeah.
But you do like to kick back from time to time.
Well, next time you should definitely come for longer and enjoy it a bit.
It's a lovely place. I mean, I love the Mediterranean as all of us Northern Europeans do. It's such a great place. It's relaxed.
Lovely
the food
destination.
is great. The people are great.
Oh.
It's always so relaxing.
I know, it was so funny. We got one of our feedback forms from an in-house guest recently. And I don't know how many times they've been, but they said, "Oh, this place is so lovely. I can't believe it. The food's fantastic. We love the views. This would actually be great for a holiday as well." And I was thinking, like, well, actually, most people do come here for a holiday, but they were obviously here for business. But it was the way that they wrote it was such an afterthought of, like as if we hadn't even considered that ourselves. So, yeah, I thought it was a really funny comment. So how have you found the St. Raphael itself and being here?
That's been fabulous. We've just here for a few days, as we were saying, and I've been busting in and out to the centre every day, so I haven't spent that much time in the hotel, but the time here has been lovely, and I must say, and I say this from the heart, the staff have been fantastic. Friendly, helpful, useful, getting ourselves out of a couple of pickles when we struggle to get taxis as things have been so busy. Really nice bunch of people, and a credit to the hotel. The hotel's been very...
they're our biggest asset, so thank you so much. So when you've travelled around all over the place, what's your favourite place? If you had to pick one...
Probably, actually, and I'll be lucky to say I'm going back there in a few weeks, Japan.
Oh, wow.
Really
my husband really wants to go to Japan.
Yeah, there's something sort of beautiful and exotic and slightly mystical about Japan in every way. It's quite difficult to penetrate if you don't speak the language, obviously.
Yeah.
But the calmness, the zen of the culture, the beauty of the landscape, all the cultural artifacts and the food.
Wow.
It's just
It's amazing,
fantastic.
huh?
If there was one, if I had
An organization, I'm sure.
Yeah, if there's one last place I would like to spend a couple of weeks, I'd probably pick Japan, or the top of a mountain somewhere. I like mountains.
Ah. So I love asking all the guests this. Well, not all, but it's a lot. And you being a man of words, I definitely want to ask, what is one of your favorite quotes?
One of my favorite quotes. Oh, that's really...
I put you on the spot now.
That really has put me on the spot. You know, I've always been very bad at telling jokes from a kid. You know, there was always someone that would rattle off jokes.
Oh, until now, there's always someone who can be at a dinner party and just...
Yeah, and even when those... I'm playing for time now, as you can tell. Even when I've heard a joke, which is really funny, I thought, I must remember that. I can never remember them. And actually, now you've put me on the spot.
Or sayings or mantra or something, yeah.
I would say, as I've touched on a few times, I guess, be humble, be honest, be true to yourself, those sorts of things. I think in this complex world, if you're not true to yourself, if you don't have personal values that you live, it can be psychologically very, very difficult. I mean, we all suffer arguments with ourselves about should I be doing something or another? Is my career right? Is my boss doing the right thing? Am I in the right relationship? All those sorts of things. But you have to be true to yourself. You have to, I think, care about those around you. And most people, I think, that's what makes humanity such an incredible thing. The bonds that people make because of that care for themselves and care for families and the groups around us. Which
we're social beings.
Rather than the quote as a sort of theme for life. Life, I think that's
beautiful. Absolutely. So the last question that I will ask you is one that I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have many left now because these are not asked by me. Yep. It's a team effort, and the team have put together some questions. So you can see I've had quite a lot of podcasts already because this jar was full. So we'll take one. Shall I read it out to you? Okay, I hope it's something we haven't already touched on. How would you describe yourself in just one word?
That's just one. That
just
is really,
one.
I sometimes put to interviewees.
I'm quite impressed with my team because they've come up with some really deep questions.
Just 3 words.
Well, we can do 3 and then narrow it down.
I'd like to say thoughtful, caring, perhaps actually be a bit more self-critical, intense. A bit too intense.
I think intense is positive. I interpret that as positive.
Let's go for intense because I've got a horrible habit of when I do something.
Enthusiastic. For me, intense means enthusiastic, really going for something and loving it. That's brilliant. Well, I think you've touched on so many interesting points, and the main being know yourself and be true to yourself. I think too many of us in this day and age have imposter syndrome where people are pretending to be something they're not, whether that's on social media with their friends, they're acting out, and then, when the doors close and the party's over, so to speak, they realize that they don't even know themselves and they hit depression, they feel low, they feel sad. And I think what you've said is absolutely fundamental for people now of any age, is just to spend time getting to know yourself, spend time loving yourself, forgiving yourself, caring for yourself. Yeah. And moving forward and growing and in subscribing to things you care about, learning, absolutely educating yourself. I'm
just finishing a book. I've got it in my room. I've been reading a couple of pages in the evening when I've had a moment. It's about Hollywood in the 1980s. Sorry, in the 1970s.
London or Hollywood?
No, Hollywood. The way the old studio system fell apart and it was reborn, but then that fell apart. And it fell apart largely because people weren't true to themselves. They were living these myths, and they started to believe the myths that not so much they were peddling, but were being peddled around them. And it's really tragic. It's reading the story of the Spielbergs and the George Lucases and the like. They survived it, but the
Marilyn Monroe and so many other people that just couldn't do it. They couldn't live that persona that was created for them.
Yeah, people like the producer Evans and Peter Bogdanovich and people, they just completely lost the plot because they couldn't live this artificial life. It's quite harrowing, actually, the story. So.
And a lot of the time, I think them and other people, they end up not even creating that for themselves. So it's not even that they're, I would like to be that person, so I'm going to pretend to be that person, because at least there's almost an aim in that. But someone else has told them, well, you're a woman, you should behave like this. You're a man and you're the son of, you should be like this. Or you're good looking and therefore you have to look, and have these girlfriends around you, or whatever it might be. And all these people have just ended up just miserable because that's not who they truly are. It's not who they wanted to be. They even became those people before they even knew who they were in some cases. So yeah, I think these are the stories we all have to look at and then learn from that. And even on a more simpler scale, without looking at the famous and the well-known, but even as parents, as friends, as mentors for anyone, is just to encourage people to be true to themselves. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure being with you today.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. I'm so happy to have met you, and I hope that you'll come back and stay at the hotel many, many more times.
Really
we'll
look
see you
forward to
more.
it. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for being here.